Hey, everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And tonight, we had to do this an hour later than normal, and I apologize for that. But tonight, we have Ray Boutin and Mathew Fisher on, and they are from the very popular podcast called Mostly Ghostly. And so we're going to be talking about that, about all things paranormal with them. But let me give you a rundown on who these guys are. If you'll pardon the frog in my throat. So Ray Boutin is a board certified hypnotherapist, also certified in past life regression, which is something I definitely want to get into with you, Ray. He's also a certified Reiki master and a teacher. He has been initiated into the order of the, I'm going to mess this word up, Melchizedek.
Melchizedek.
Thank you. Jeez.
I'm all too familiar.
And I know, honestly, I know nothing about that order. But he's also has a certificate of completion from the Israel Bible Center, studies in the Hebrew Bible. He has 20 years experience as a medium, including running seminars in meditation and connecting with those in spirit. And he's also an actor with, I guess, 15 years experience, maybe more. And Mathew Fisher, let me get to his notes, is an underground do-it-yourself filmmaker from Massachusetts who has spent the last decade and a half building up his filmography and fan base, producing films in the range of anywhere from $10,000 to $300,000 in and around Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, that whole area. In the early 2000s, he started making short films and compilation videos using his family's Hi8 camcorder. After acquiring his own camera, he continued with the shorts, and during this time, he has also started directing music videos and documenting live musical acts that came into the Boston area, as well as acts already a part of the underground scene. He's worked with the full spectrum from budgets and studios from Trauma Entertainment and Full Moon Productions and all the way to Columbia Pictures and the TLC network. His work has reached overseas acclaim and collaborations with artists from the United Kingdom, Germany, Iceland, France, Mexico, Argentina, back to the States and Canada. He continues to write, direct, and produce for himself and other filmmakers under the Boombastics film brand. So, guys, that was quite a intro bio, but it's great to have you here.
Welcome.
We've been really looking forward to talking with you guys because you guys are like us. Yeah, you on your podcast, you run the gamut on the paranormal. So it's great to have you.
Great to be here. Great to be.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the first thing I want to talk about, Ray, is past life regression. So you believe in reincarnation, but I understand Matt doesn't.
Yes, I do. I've been doing the hypnosis for about 15 years. And that includes the past life regression. An example would be one lady, and part of the key to hypnosis is to get them into a trance. You say nothing, and you allow them to speak. And you do it by a series of questions. I would usually start it, like, for instance, look at your feet. What do you see? Your legs, until they're describing how they're dressed. Look up. What do you see? And they build a picture that way. And the particular lady I was working with, she was standing there. The clothing described was from about the 1800s. And she was in a cemetery, and she saw a gravestone. The gravestone had two names. And later on, in her own, she gave more information, but later on in her own research, she was able to locate those people who lived in that area, and she had never been there before.
Wow.
And her dress was perfect to the period. The people that had lived there, while she was able, under the trance, she was able to give details about their life. What she could find out a little bit, like one of them was a preacher and the other one was a teacher, she was able to give in the trance and later confirm in their obituaries that she was able to find in newspapers everything about them. So
Very cool.
to me, that is, she had no way to access that information from the 1800s, but she was able to give it and then confirm it later on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's curious. I have a couple questions for you, Ray, very quickly off the bat. Number one, were you inspired in any way by Dolores Cannon's work and her method of quantum healing? God, I forget the entire. It's QHHT, I believe it is. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Dolores Cannon, she was essentially somebody very integral to past life regression and going very deep below the lineman to pull out certain spiritual affects and forth. She developed this methodology over the years from her own research. And the second question would also correspond to something that she had mentioned, and that was that she wouldn't work with anybody who type of mental illness, say schizophrenia or any sort of augmented personality. And I always thought that was kind of curious. What are your thoughts on Dolores Cannon and the second aspect there of not being able to work with some people based on their mental capacity?
Well, I'm not familiar with her work, so it's difficult to comment on that. The mental capacity, I would have to say I would agree, because if you are looking at someone who is, let's say, creating scenarios in their head, you can trust it less than to be able to get them in a trance and get beyond those mental issues. So I can see where there might be a problem there.
Do you think that some of those mental issues are a result of, perhaps, I've heard someone say in way of certain energy, the way that it plays in the spine. For the moment, I'm losing the exact methodology. I'll come up to it. Regardless, they were saying that the energy sometimes would only go so high and that this person was literally not necessarily fully in their body as a result of this mental condition, or maybe it was something they brought in with them from a past life. What are your thoughts on that kind of idea?
That I will agree with. Part of the Reiki is also the healing energy, but you work with the chakras and the energy system within your body, and you have to clear the blockages on a regular basis, your own, and you can work with people to clear the blockages in their chakras. Also, the Order of Melchizedek uses the macabre as a way of generating an energy field around you to put you in an altered state and raise your consciousness up so that you're actually tapping into other dimensions and higher consciousness. You have to be open for that. The chakras have to be cleared. You yourself go through a meditation and a ritual to do it. And all of that plays into the connecting your energy to the energy of the universe and the energy that is out there for you to be able to access this higher knowledge, your higher self. There is actually, most people know of 7 chakras in the human body. There is a chakra cleansing meditation that takes an hour and a half. You start and you go through 33 chakras from your original Adam, Cadmian, or light body creation through your past lives, all the way up to your future lives and connecting with your higher self. So it is all about the energy. It is all about breaking free from your body and connecting on higher energy levels and other dimensions with your true self.
Michael, I think I can answer your question about people with mental health issues. we've had a couple of certified hypnotherapists on the show, and they both said we're not qualified to treat somebody with mental mental health issues, and so that's probably why they can get in a lot of trouble for that. Actually,
So on a clinical level, you're suggesting, Damien, rather than a spiritual level?
right? And so
Okay.
I mean, being that they're certified hypnotherapists, they're not certified in clinical psychology.
Okay.
So that what they have to do is they have to refer them to an actual clinical psychologist to get help. So I think that's the best answer to that question.
Makes sense
But
to me.
Matthew, see, I'm kind of behind you, Ray. I believe in reincarnation. I truly do.
Yeah.
But Matthew, you don't, and I'm kind of curious as to why.
I don't. Well, it's not. I don't think that it's definitely not, real. But I lean more towards the two other things. Which one would be like it's all black, just all darkness, and it's a wrap, or more of like a psychological heaven or hell, where like your conscious still is alive, and it's kind of it has to either be it's like a karma thing. Like if you were bad your entire life and you die, you're left with your thoughts of knowing that you could have been good, but you were terrible. And maybe even in certain situations, you might like have to see the things that you did done to the people that you care about, so you can kind of get the equal trade off of the evil that you did. But if you were good, you go into the light, you go into that positive energy, and that's where it's you would be with your family and friends and such. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think it's interesting that people often look at life after death and still have, even those who have had near-death experiences, they still walk around with this sense of duality, which is essentially, based on my understanding, predominantly experienced here in the third dimension, the way that we know it. So while our mind will always sort of construct things with limits, beginnings and ends, that's just the Fibonacci element to us, if you will. Beyond that, coming out of that vibration, that frequency, I think at some point you do transcend duality in its entirety and perhaps go into a completely different state of awareness or being that may be paralleled with some description that we could give of a constant reality, but would be so completely foreign to us in this particular mind lock, in this particular paradigm and our understanding, that all we can do is sort of infer that something like this may happen. But again, the duality, it's just interesting how people automatically carry it over, and myself as well. I don't think I've known one person who hasn't had a small splinter of that in their idea of what life after death was, no matter who you were.
Yeah, I believe in like another life, maybe in an energy form, but like the idea of coming into an animal or being reborn like a baby. That's just. But I believe in paranormal. So there, you know what I mean? There is something. I do believe in something after.
So you think that there's ghosts, just not reincarnation?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm not a big. I don't really subscribe to the coming back. I think like when you live your life, you almost get like that one life, and then you go off into whatever the next thing is. Yeah, me and Ray, it's fun because one of the fun things me and Ray go back and forth on.
Kimberly, you had a question a little earlier, and I think I interrupted you.
Oh, you're fine. Going back to the as far as hypnotizing those that are with like mental issues or whatever, wouldn't that fall under the characteristic that if you hypnotize somebody, you still have your own, you're still aware of things, and I think that would really disturb them and really mess them up as far even more, if they found out something that they weren't, you couldn't mentally, grasp.
That makes sense. That they can grasp and put their head around it, so it would hurt them more.
Them up even more.
Right.
And I think that may be the reason as to why they don't do that. Because, I mean, it'll even mess up somebody that doesn't have mental issues to start with.
Wild, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, just now I was thinking about the medical and mental issues and hypnotism. I mean, it kind of just reminds me of like if you go to get a massage, you know, if you have like if you have a physical condition, you know, they usually won't give you a massage, or they'll ask for a doctor's note just because they don't want to make it worse. So I feel like if someone has a mental problem, then I could see how hypnotism could potentially make things worse. So that makes sense. But yeah. But as far as reincarnation and the afterlife and ghost, I do think that something happens when I've said this before, like I'm not really afraid of death. I think if I know I'm about to die, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to die a few minutes from now, I'm probably going to be excited. My attitude is going to be like, I'm about to start a brand new adventure. It's going to be awesome. I think that'll help me also. You know, I don't want to be panicked or scared while I'm dead. So I'm going to have this positive outlook. So I do think something happens after death. And I think it can be unpleasant, but I think it could also not be, it could be nice as well. It might have to do with your mindset. Like, where are you at by the time you're dying, you know? And as far as so in Ghost, I do think that it does seem that some people and living things do stick around after death in some way, and they could observe us. And then as far as reincarnation, I think that could be possible as well. There's just so many things we don't know for sure. These are just speculations on my point. But I do think there's something after death. I do think there is something after death.
Yeah, I think we just transfer energy is what I think, you know.
Well, we're looking at this, again, in a very linear fashion. We say a life that we lived or a life that we're going to live, where, in fact, everything is happening at once in the grand scheme of things, this infinite moment. And that, again, is another tough thing for our logical mind to wrap itself around. But that being said, if that's the case, every life that's happening right now at this point that you'll ever live is being lived, technically you could somehow create energetic bridges to these awarenesses or other personalities to either communicate or, I mean, even what you do today, whatever choice you're making affects that past self or the future self that you may or may not be living.
Do you think that our souls, for lack of a better term, are living lives in different dimensions currently?
You mean at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. I think one at a time.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's like you have a whole piano, right? You open up the piano, inside you see all the strings. I'll make this quick, promise. All of these strings may be representing every dimension that has infinite potential to be experienced. You, with your consciousness, decide, well, I like D sharp. Pluck, and you pluck that vibration, and that's the reality you experience at the moment. Doesn't necessarily mean that the other strings don't exist. You're just focused on the sound and the moment and being in that D sharp.
Makes sense.
And then, yes, to go along with that, and this idea of other dimensions, I do think, well, I know for sure that humans, as we're alive, we're very limited in our perception. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's like infrared rays, there's radio waves, all this stuff going on. And as humans, we are just very limited to what we can observe.
Right.
So I think if something remains after death, I think some of those constraints come off, and we're able to observe things that we weren't when we were alive. So it's possible that, the idea is interesting that while we're alive here, we're also, living a life or experiencing something in another dimension. It's possible that could be happening, but like I said, we're just so limited right now with our perception, so we don't realize it till after death, perhaps.
It's because we've been dumbed down so much.
I'm sorry, we can barely hear you. What'd you say?
I said that's because we've been dumbed down so much that we're limited to our knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. Matt and Ray, I got a question for you about your podcast, Mostly Ghostly. How did you guys get started with this?
Well, me and Ray, we kind of got introduced to each other through the film world, writing and directing something. on set, it was a conversation, piece, paranormal stuff. We always, it's one of the things that kind of always pops up, especially on like a horror movie. You know what I mean? And the theme of it is that has a very otherworldly vibe to it. So me and Ray just kind of always clicked with that. We did a few productions together, and I started getting more into podcasting. When I first entered into it, like a paranormal show, something I knew I'd want to do because I've always been like obsessed with it and just loved it as a kid. And I know Ray knows all this stuff on it. I mean, he's my guru, and I reached out to him and I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he was gung ho. And we started it up a couple years ago.
Was it a couple of years ago? Was it?
Very cool.
Yeah, I think it's almost 2 years now.
Wow.
I have a question for you guys. You talk about video a lot. What is your what camera do you like using? Like what's the what's the last camera you guys use that you like using for filming?
Shot on a Red, one of our last cameras.
Oh, a Red.
Yeah, Reds are real nice, but we've shot on everything. DSLR. We do these small little anthology films, like shorts for anthology films with a friend of ours out of the UK, and I want to do one on a cell phone just because people always talk about how you can do them that way now. It's it's in your pocket, so it'd be fun just to do it. Just that one little short. I wouldn't want to become some cell phone filmmaker or anything like that.
Sure. Interesting. Okay.
You also have another podcast that you're involved with, and it's called Behold a Pale Podcast, and it deals with conspiracy.
Hell yeah.
Discussions.
Another one of my favorite things to talk.
Talk to us about that a little bit.
That can get you in more trouble, though. Favorite? I mean, there's so many great ones. We got big ones like Harp and stuff like that, as well as we dive into like the Sam Cooke, like his murder, and these smaller ones that are fun. The Cecil Hotel, stuff like that. My favorites, I mean, we just did. I really like the Harp one a lot. Harp ones I like to go back to because it's interesting, like the damage that can be done with it. You know what I mean? And it's a real thing. It's right out there in the open. But changing there could be very drastic. You know what I mean? We've seen movies for years. Yeah.
Would you mind explaining the Harp real quick for some of the people who may not know what that is?
So Harp's like it's a weather controlling. What do you call it? Like it's like an environmental program thing almost, but it's like what they want to do is they got a bunch of fans and magic powders flying around, and the main thing of it is that they want to kind of be able to control weather so they can add stuff to the air to kind of make storms happen in certain places and stuff like that.
Is the chemtrails part of that?
Chemtrails is part of it.
Yeah, okay.
Everything's all connected.
Well, Matt, if you subscribe to something like Harp, what are your thoughts on what may or may not have been done at Montauk Camp Hero with the Sage radar system?
With the radar system? Filming on the radar.
Long story short, they were using it to broadcast a specific frequency that laid between 420 and 460 megahertz, which was what the Sage radar was capable of, and they were using this in way of not only specific individualized mind control, the way that maybe we talked about in MK Ultra. Obviously the radio sound and that weather manipulation came first back in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s. Essentially, they were just using this radar tower to transmit their own will, either on the population at large or even the animal population. They experimented with weather and so forth. Are you familiar with the Montauk Project story?
That sounds familiar. I think I believe that they would do that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Sure.
Cool.
Of course. I mean, mind control is one of those things that, it's one of those things. If you subscribe to like any of like the overall like being kind of manipulated thing, you got to get in with the mind control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just they go hand in hand, one and the same.
Let's talk a little bit about cryptozoology and cryptids. I got a question for the entire panel here. Have you seen that recent video? I believe it came out of Idaho, and it's a close-up shot of Bigfoot, but the shot only lasts about, I don't know, 6 seconds, something like that, and it's just repeated over and over and over, which really makes it suspect to me. But you take a close look at this supposed Bigfoot, and the thing, first of all, the thing is huge. It's absolutely huge. If this is a guy in a costume, I mean, I can see, some big athlete being in a costume like that. But because it's a close-up shot, you can see the musculature throughout the body. And I mean, I don't know what to think of this thing. I really don't. I mean, you can even see the bottom of its feet, and they're very pale. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this video?
I think it's too short to even judge it properly.
Right.
I mean, if you've got video going of Bigfoot and it's that clear, keep it going.
Right. That drives me nuts. There was another one not too long ago where this guy in a kayak took footage of a Bigfoot that was wading through a creek. Mm-hmm. And the video ends before the thing even gets out of the creek. I mean, the thing is walking toward the edge of the creek, and the video ends. So you can't see it actually get out of the creek. And I mean, these short videos drive me nuts. I mean, say what you will about the Gimlin thing, but at least it's complete footage.
It was long video. You can see the face, you can see the side, you can see it walking. I'm looking for the video. Did you guys post it on the Black Lotus page?
I think I did. I don't remember.
Yep. I think Damien did put it up there.
All right.
What do you, Ray? What do you and Matt think about this? About Bigfoot?
Well, I have not seen that video. Do I think that's Bigfoot is a possibility? Yes. I think many cryptids are a possibility. This goes partly to I do have some Micmac blood, and I was adopted locally by a tribe, and many of the legends that and the stories that they would tell, they would look at it not as current 21st century people do. They would look at it as, this is a real being. Mm. This is something real that is with you. And having taken part in ceremonies there on the reservation, I really believe that there is fact behind these beliefs. When they say it is real, I believe that it is real. Knowing these people and things that I've seen, I'd have to say yes. Whether it is Bigfoot, Wendigo, or Wendigo, whichever way you want to say it, I believe that these are real.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't seen the footage yet either. But I definitely believe that it could be something for sure, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I kind of sit down where Ralph is, and I have to ask the question, why the brevity? Listen, if you're out there, whoever's listening to the show, and you capture something anomalous on camera, whether it be a cryptid, an extraterrestrial, a spirit, don't stop rolling and don't edit it, for God's sake. Let us see the raw footage of you pulling the phone out of your pocket, pressing the record. Oh my God, it's shaky. Who cares? Because it's a candid moment, and we're going to have more to look towards in the way of legitimacy if you just give us the entire raw footage. Otherwise, The video that Damien is talking about here, there are some very curious aspects to it in way of physicality and perhaps movement, the gait, and so forth. But like he said, we have about 4 to 6 seconds of this video. Where's the rest of it?
Right, exactly.
It could be because they got scared too.
But every
Well, I was
time,
wondering
though,
about that,
you
too.
know,
Yeah.
every time. I mean, these are seasoned hunters. Some of them that are out there, they're armed with rifles and other. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
You're fine.
No, I mean, that's my point. These guys, not everybody will hightail it off. I mean, you guys have sometimes hunters sitting in trees up in the stands, and you know, bears will come up there and kind of meander around, lick their ear, and you know, these guys don't scare. They're very cautious, but again, this is very, very concerning when we look at some of these submissions in way of cryptozoology, because again, the material, the content is not there, and it's not congruous to the purported sighting that they put forth.
You know,
Although I
the
do believe in
paranormal
cryptids.
world- yeah, the paranormal world already has a black eye. Do we need these little short videos to further blacken them? You know, I mean, my God. Did you guys happen to see the recent video? I want to see, or photographs, I guess it is, of the Loch Ness Monster. And it's an overhead shot from a drone this guy had put up there because he wanted to, I guess they were having some sort of boat race or something like that. And in the shot he got, you can see what is almost clearly a plesiosaur. You know, I mean, it's not a log. I have no idea what it is, but
Yeah, there's
really,
definitely something there.
yeah, there's definitely, and like I said, it's in the shape of the plesiosaur. Have you guys seen that?
I haven't seen that one yet.
I've seen that one.
It's that stuff's definitely, you know, that was. I just had to go deep down and travel around to survive. You know what I mean? As long as nothing killed it, those things would be able to kind of survive a little bit, I feel. And as far as the video, I mean, the shorter the video, the easier to fake. You know, that's kind of even a film thing. And we've probably all seen TikTok videos with 12-year-old girls doing incredible makeup jobs with what they have in their, you know, bathroom cabinet. You know what I mean? So it's possible, and you know, there's a lot of people that would like to put videos out there and kind of catch cult status for a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's interesting. I'd have to see it to see how the kind of the muscles move. What you were talking about, because some things you just can't fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just it.
As far as videos,
Offworld Adam asks, what's the video called again? Are you talking about the Bigfoot video that we were just discussing? The close-up one, Adam? And if so, just Google massive Bigfoot
Caught on camera, I think is what it was called.
Idaho or something like that. Yeah, just Google that and you'll find it. It's pretty easy.
I was going to comment on the whole video thing, and as far as paranormal stuff, like, part of me wants to just be like, look, I'm done with video because it could be so fake. There's so many hosters. We have technology, but I don't want to throw away anything. So my thoughts on video and the paranormal are, it's good. Okay, it's still good, but you need a lot of stuff to go with the video. You need all the details. You know, where was it filmed? When was it filmed? What kind of camera was it filmed with? What was the frame rate? What were all the settings? You really need all of that information, and unfortunately, if any of that information is lacking, it almost has no quality other than entertainment. Other than entertainment, it kind of loses any value to me.
Right.
There's no way to log data. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
you know, with Loch Ness, I don't think I'm mistaken. It could be, but I do believe that it still does connect through various channels out to the North Sea. So while the researchers who had some years ago, within the last, I think it was, oh God, it might have been 10 years ago now, that they had tested the waters to see what kind of DNA they could pull out of it, and they found pretty conclusively, to a certain degree, that there were very large eels that inhabited the Loch Ness. Still, we have to consider that there are times where the water levels are higher, and then, you know, certain things may be coming from the North Sea, and, you know, just going in there to spend a little time, eat, do its thing, because then again, we also don't know the migrating patterns or the habits of a creature like a plesiosaur, because we've never actually handled or seen one first and foremost to observe. So,
Exactly.
you know, we could find something coming soon in the way of revelry when it comes to something like the Loch Ness, but, you know, we're going to have to get a little bit more savvy with our seas at large, and, of course, that takes time.
Yeah. In fact, I just recently heard that Loch Ness is at its lowest water level in known history. And I think that's why we've had so many sightings this past year.
I got a question for you
There's so
guys.
many caverns and so many undiscovered or unexplored places as well.
I got a question for you. Like in the sense of paranormal, where you hear a lot of electrical equipment will go out. You feel the same thing could be with like a Bigfoot deal, where there's some type of paranormal blows out. That's why you're only getting that small bit of footage.
That's definitely a theory out there about Bigfoot, that it's possibly an interdimensional being. I don't know if I really hold to that theory, but it is a theory that's out there. I'm more of a flesh and blood kind of guy. So
it's also the idea that I think it's an interesting point. So could these creatures like Bigfoot, for example, be doing something, to prevent a good video or something? Like another thing they could be doing is like lions and tigers produce what's called infrasound. So it's a sound that just makes you super uneasy and super scared. So if you're a huge predator like a Bigfoot, I could see how you might want to produce that infrasound, and that may make people uneasy, and who knows what kind of effects it could have with electronic equipment. I mean, electronic equipment is incredibly finicky. I mean, any extreme temperature change, like cold, you guys know this because you do with cameras. Camera gets too hot, it's done. If it gets too cold, it's done. There's all kinds of things that could possibly mess with cameras. But that's why the other thing about photographs I was going to say is the other thing that videos and photographs have more value to me is if they are done on film. So I'm talking about no electronic cameras. I'm talking if you actually take pictures of UFOs and cryptids with a film camera. This is a chemical process. Those pictures actually have a lot more value. They have a lot more data saved in them that you could get, real discoveries out of.
we were talking about data, and one of the things I want to talk about is alien abduction. People ask, where's the data? Where's the proof? Well, how do you do that when, like me, I was abducted in 1988 and I didn't recount any of it until 1995? Where's my proof? It's just in my head. What sort of proof can we offer? People like Wreaking Havoc has come on the show, and he's shown us where he's had scoop, flesh has been scooped off of him, and he has bruises, and he has little dots like in a triangle. But how is that proof? What sort of proof can we get from alien abductees?
I think as far as extraterrestrials, aliens, we don't know really what they are. So this is just a blanket term I'm using. I'm using, abductions, aliens, whatever these things are. To me, it seems fairly obvious that they are anywhere from 2,000 to 2 million years more advanced in our understanding of technology. So it's always going to be very difficult for us to get any kind of evidence or to get a leg up on them. Unfortunately, it almost seems like we just have to wait, literally just wait until our technology catches up somewhat with theirs before we can make any headroom. And it does seem to be happening. I think the reason why the military has been seeing more UFOs is, I think they mentioned, they upgraded their equipment. This new equipment is able to detect things better. And I think as technology increases, I think we will get more disclosure of cryptids and UFOs and ghosts, just because our technology will make it easier to prove, basically.
But our technology is coming from them to start with. They're not going to give us everything that they know.
Right.
Quite possibly.
They always keeping something.
But in this field of esoterics, when you ask what proof is, I think it really boils down to a cumulative conclusion. I think that's the most that we can conjecture, in the way of conjecture, have some sort of opinion when it comes to this, because this type of proof is very experiential, it's very intangible, and again, if enough people have it, these experiences, chances are there's going to be some sort of consensus in the way of a shifting reality, wherein, who knows, maybe people who don't accept it will start experiencing it as well. This is a totally different form of stimuli and, inputting this within our own filters. And now we're trying to, I think, in some ways, use an old world measuring system that we haven't allowed to catch up with our experiences and what we're actually observing. And so therefore, we only have cumulative conclusion to really go on as of now.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
I did have a question for our guests. I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think is the closest, of all the paranormal topics you're interested in, which do you think is the closest to being disclosed, or for it to stop being paranormal and actually being normal, like being actual fact, if that makes any sense? What do you think the closest to proving is correct?
Ray, you want to go first?
I thought you might do that to me. Okay, I would probably say life after death.
Okay, interesting.
If you're looking at work in the quantum field and energy fields, the work they're doing now about how consciousness continues and goes out into the universe, science is looking into it on multiple levels. Whether they admit it or not, that's partly what they're looking into. I would say there. And also sometimes and there was a study in England they did with a group of mediums, and it looked like in the results they were kind of hesitant to admit there was something there that they couldn't explain, it, that there was actually something from the other side, so to speak, coming through.
Interesting.
I think a lot of that has to do with how they approach it and how much of an open mind they have. What I'll do is that, okay, when I was doing the mediumship, to make sure that people knew that it was communication, I had rules. And one of the rules is, I don't want to know who you are, who you want to talk to, anything. I would go in completely cold. I would not socialize ahead of time. I'd isolate. And the other rule I had is, I will give you information and you say yes or no. Now, I might give somebody some information. They may think, oh, that sounds like, I throw my hand up and say, stop. Just yes or no. Do you understand? And the studies that were done in England were very similar. And there was a lot that they could not explain unless you were to accept it was coming from somewhere else. And I found that very interesting. I also found that, well, from personal experience and being a medium, is there an afterlife? I have to say yes. An example I like to give is, there was a young girl one time, and I was giving her information about her father, and she was on the verge of tears. And I could see her father standing next to her, even though he was in spirit. And I asked him with my mind, give me something she knows you're there. And he pointed to his ring finger where the wedding band would be, and there was nothing there. He pointed to her pocket and smiled. I said, thank you. And I said, your father wants you to know that he's with you right now. You have his wedding band in your pocket. And she broke down crying and took the wedding band out.
Wow.
Wow.
Now
That's amazing.
I have to make it real for them because I know it is real. I couldn't know that. I never met her, spoke to her, never met her father when he was alive. But when I would give a message, I wanted to make sure that they knew, by my standards, that this had to come from those in spirit.
Ray, did I hear you say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but did I hear you say that you had asked the father mentally? So
Yes,
she didn't hear what you were saying?
I communicate with my I speak in my mind. I don't speak out loud.
Okay.
It's just when I have the evidence, then I actually speak. But the conversation happens in my mind. I connect on what I call a vibrational or energy level with their energy and spirit.
Okay.
And they can talk to you as well, right?
Yes. The interesting thing about talking is, I did a family gallery. I went into a house. There was a family there, and I was speaking to them. And afterwards, and this is why, to me, it is more of an energy or vibration. And with the mind, it said afterwards, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know you spoke Portuguese." And I said, "I don't speak Portuguese." He said, "Well, that was my grandmother. She didn't speak English." But in the realm of spirit, you communicate in a different way, and language is not a barrier.
I believe that.
You know, it's curious. I've actually had a very similar experience in certain ways. Back in 2012, I believe it was, I was out barbecuing for a couple friends, and somebody had called me on the phone, and they said, "Listen, you know, it's a good friend of mine. He says I'm having a tough time. My father has passed away, and he did about 6 months prior. He said I'm just having a real difficult time emotionally." I'm like, okay, so we started talking a little bit about it, and all of a sudden, boom, here was his dad, but this big smile, short guy wearing a leather jacket, dark leather jacket, casually dressed, and he's there smiling, and it's persistent in your mind's eye. You can't like blink, it won't go away. It's just right there in front of you. So as my friend is telling me, his heart, basically, I said to his father mentally, I said, go to him now and let him know that you're there. And I didn't say anything to my friend that, I had his father already and, got the attention. As my friend is talking, all of a sudden he goes, wait a minute. Oh my God. I think he's here right now, and he'd never really had an experience this close to spirit before, and he had the chills and the frisson experience, but he identified that it was his father. And I said, well, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I just asked him because he showed up, and I asked him to go over to you, and he said, no way, I can't believe it. And I said, listen, let me tell you what he's wearing. I've never seen the guy in person. I've never seen a picture of him. I don't know anything about his father. And I gave him the description. He said, oh my God, that's my father to a T. And what ended up happening was he had given me this jacket that was his father's after he had passed, and I had put it away, and it was in the closet. I hadn't really worn it. Apparently, I was seeing that specific jacket on his father, but only put it together later. So just to kind of add on what Ray was mentioning there.
Wow.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's very hard to follow Ray with something like that. Yeah, but to support him, I'll agree with him, and I'll say, the afterlife, definitely. I mean, you have mediums that are on crime scenes that are talking to people from the other side to help investigations. And you even, there's certain places where if your house is haunted, you have to tell people who are attempting to buy your house if it's up for sale. But I think little things like that are definitely kind of proof that it's going to be a little more open in the future, I think.
It's interesting, too. I will say that if you guys are familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, the previous owner was Robert Bigelow, who is a billionaire. He's also working with NASA, making like little houses for inflatable houses or homes for not homes, like enclosures for people to live on Mars. Anyway, he's really into the paranormal. He used to own Skinwalker Ranch. He had a nonprofit organization. He hired all these scientists to study the paranormal, and he recently gave several thousands of dollars for proposals, and these proposals were for someone who could come up with an experiment to prove the afterlife. So he's actively funding that specific type of research. So that's also interesting that you guys said that.
Yeah.
Would you guys
$1 million?
think that the afterlife is going to be proven before the existence of aliens?
I think it could be, just because the afterlife, I don't think it's trying to hide itself from us. Mm-hmm. Like aliens, okay. I think they're trying to hide from us on purpose. But the afterlife, perhaps the afterlife wants us to know that it's there. It's not trying to hide.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Well, it's just a natural course. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Michael?
I just said it's a natural. All I said was it's a natural course.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Right. Eventually, everything comes out.
Well, speaking of spirit world, do you guys think individually that there is a difference between a ghost and a spirit? Let me throw that question at you, Ray.
Yeah.
I would say that the only thing different, it's how we categorize them. I don't think there is any difference. I think it's just a label we put on them. When it's a haunting, we call it a ghost. Most of the time, we've gotten used to that. I don't think that there's any difference between ghost or spirit. It's the same thing. We as human beings like to put a label on everything. And
they put a different definition on the ghost is considered to have residual energy left.
There's residual hauntings. If you're talking a spirit, then you're talking about an active entity or an active energy there, something
Okay.
that you can interact with. What I like to go to is sometimes it is simply a case of language. I know that when I was doing some studies on ancient languages, and I was looking for one word and how it made its way into our language right now. And matter of fact, mostly Ghostly did something on fairies.
Mm.
And there was an old word that originally started, it was an old Arab word that eventually went over to Greek, and that eventually went over into English. And it ended up as FAI apostrophe RE. And I think it went through France and then to English, which eventually it became our fairy.
Hmm.
But the original Arab word stood for jinn.
Right.
So it's kind of like, but there were two. The Latin gave it went one way, and then the Greek went another way. And the Greek was the one that was accepted, modified, and the story was changed along with the word down the line. So it's all in translation, interpretation, society at that time, the label, how they're going to interpret it and put the language on it. And I think ghost and spirit are the same. Residual haunting and active are different. But me, ghost and spirit, they're basically, in my mind, the same thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. We used to have a panel member on Black Lotus, and his name is Keith Anthony Blanchard, and he talks quite extensively about fairies. And he's had encounters with them, and pretty interesting.
Do you guys believe in fairies?
Yeah, there's there's like the Tinkerbelly ones that we know from cartoons. There's also some scary ones that are almost Pugawudgie like. It's all depends on their like what they put forth type deal. Definitely believe in that whole deal for sure. Something's out there.
Right, like the jinn.
Like the gin.
Yeah.
The gin. The gin I found out about not too long ago when we did an episode on it, maybe season, and the gin's like a horror thing, you know what I mean? I'm a horror fan, so I like the Wishmaster films, and gin's such a dark entity, you know what I mean? Very, very dark. Ray knew all about the gin.
Well, they're a good gin as well as bad.
Yeah, they are,
Right.
but I just think of the bad ones.
Yeah, you like the bad ones. They're more fun in the movies and the stories.
Right.
I think the question was interesting about the difference between spirits and ghosts. I think there's probably a rainforest worth of different types of life that exists on the same plane. Once again, the plane that we can't interact with. So I think as humans, we have just little information. We're barely trying to categorize what's a spirit, what's a ghost.
Yeah.
But we have such little information. But I do think that if we knew everything, we would discover that what we consider to be a ghost is not alone. There are other things around it. Like I said, a rainforest worth of different life that is just all kinds of life and form. So I do think there are probably different types of things that live that act similar. I think there are different types of things that act similar to a ghost or a spirit, and they are different. We just know so little about it.
I wonder how many instances of hauntings there are that are actually some sort of elemental being like that.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I
make
think that may
sense.
account for a lot of like poltergeist activity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I agree with that.
But
Well-
I think we're going to get out of here pretty shortly for the night. I want to remind the viewers that we are not monetized on YouTube just yet. It's coming, but it's coming very slowly. But in the meantime, if you want to support Black Lotus and you like what we do here, definitely check out the links I have in the description. We have a link for Buy Me a Coffee, and then we have our Patreon page, and more videos are going to be coming to that. And with the your monthly donation of $5 a month, you can get extra content. And videos are definitely coming up soon for that again. So definitely check that out. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up before we end. But does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything before we get out of here?
Nothing that could be answered shortly. So we must have him back again.
It doesn't need to be that short.
I have a quick one for everybody. You can give a yes or no. Do you believe everybody has the potential or ability, psychic or mediumship, to be able to see and speak with those in other dimensions or worlds?
Yes.
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 I just think
Yeah,
you
I
need
do.
to be careful about it.
Oh, definitely.
But I don't think it's for everybody.
Well, it's
Yeah,
not everybody's path.
Right. But I do think, like, we only use, they say 10% of the brain. I do think there's a lot in there that would allow us to do that.
I
It's
found
just
that,
whether or not you want to harness it.
in England, they were doing another study. This was also with mediums, and they found out that they wired their brains, and they measured the brain waves, and they found there's a section of the brain that is usually mostly dormant, that is active when they're communicating, and it is the same section that is active during deep meditation and what they call a religious experience. And
Interesting.
that section of the
Fascinating.
brain, that I forget whether it's the the brain waves, that section of the brain and the waves that come out of there in our day to day is usually dormant, hardly ever used, but it activates during times of deep meditation, prayer and spiritual experiences, and when delivering messages doing the mediumship.
Maybe because you're focusing so much on one point.
Right.
You're exercising a completely different muscle group, so to speak.
Right.
Definitely, and I think that there are techniques out there, and there are meditations and techniques to be able to try and tap that and develop it.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Actually, well, one of the things I enjoyed most is I used to run a 6-hour seminar and teach people the basics of meditation and also communication. And I would arrive and I would ask, like, I wouldn't tell the people, but I'd ask my mother and father and some friends who were in spirit to be with me. By the end of it, I would have the trainees in the class delivering the messages.
Wow.
Wow.
And it had about a 90% success rate. Once they're taught,
Wow, that high.
Once they're taught to open their mind.
Right.
Because
That's a big percentage.
I had a guarantee that, if you were not satisfied, you get your money back. I never was asked for the money.
Raise
But
That's amazing.
everybody can connect if they allow themselves to.
Right.
I believe it.
Yeah, but once I started studying the paranormal, that's one of the conclusions I came to, just from listening and reading about all kinds of stories. I was like, okay, it looks like everybody has this psychic ability. It just needs to be trained. And it looks like meditation is one of the easiest way to get there. It's basically what I discovered.
Yes.
So what's coming up with you guys?
You got this one, Matt.
Well, we're continuing to do mostly ghostly. That can be listened to where anybody streams podcasts. We're gonna start doing a show on YouTube. We got a YouTube channel called the Boombastic Media on YouTube, where we get we have some other podcasts that do interviews and stuff that's up there, and we want to do a mostly ghostly type show. So we're gonna be doing like small. It'd be the equivalent to kind of like a ghost hunter show on TV, but they might not be as long.
Okay.
We went to Rutland prison camp recently, and we shot some footage there. So it's a place over in Massachusetts, up by us. And, or was that New Hampshire, right?
No, that's Massachusetts. I've been there and had bad experiences coming back. And I've actually met somebody recently who wrote an entire book on the same entity that followed me home and what happened in her life. She'll be on the show in some days to come here. That place is no joke, though.
Yeah, it was
That's
crazy.
what I've heard.
We had some mediums with us, and they got it. We went into there's like this cellar area when you first approach it, and there was the spirits of there was a guy in each corner, and there was like a young girl that was there that they weren't kind of letting leave. And it's because like the main guy, the main spirit, the most powerful spirit, kind of took a liking to her, and it was kind of we unrolled through the whole story with her, and it was kind of a sad story where she, her home life wasn't that great to begin with, and unfortunately, she almost ended up in a better place being dead, which is horrifying. You know what I mean? But like somebody actually cared about her there. Very dark stuff. Yeah, so I'm with you that dark stuff happened there. I'm sure. I don't second guess you saying you got followed back by something for a second.
Well, the funny thing was, I went to the location, and at the time I was working with Michael Cram from Seven Hills Paranormal, which is now defunct, unfortunately, but he warned me about this particular entity. Now, I had been there prior to, but he said there's the tunnels, which is off to the left from the root cellar. If you're to move back, you'll see that there's about 6-foot drop down under. Now, the significant thing about the entity and the tunnels is that at one point, there was some sort of satanic coven that was working up there, and they had opened up something, allowed this to come in, and then just never put it back. So it's been roaming around the property ever since. And one of his ways of caution, he said, was just don't go to the tunnels. Stay in the root cellar, stay in isolation. Just don't go to the tunnels. I said, okay, sure. So myself and the 2 other investigators I had at the time, we stayed true to that. And sure enough, this thing ran audibly from the tunnels up into the root cellar, and I personally didn't hear it. It was my other investigator who did, but it was me who got the brunt of that thing being in there. As you're in the root cellar, you look at the door, and against the backdrop of the city lights, which are very faint, but you can still make it out, depending on how overgrown that entrance is, we saw these shadows file in very swiftly, very quietly, and they were all, about 5'6", 5'9", may have been male, may not have been, but featureless shadows, and they literally, again, filed around us and encompassed us. As I watched this happen, immediately my attention was drawn back to the entrance of the door, and here came this big lumbering shadow about 9 to 10 feet tall, and that's what stood behind me and got into my mind's eye, screaming, yelling, cursing. It was one of the most intense moments of anger I have felt off of anybody, living or dead. And as I got back in the car to leave, because we shortly after decided to cut the investigation short, knowing what was going on and that I was already feeling very uneasy, we get in the car, we're driving off the property, I'm like, nope, something doesn't feel right. And my other guy says, yeah, I feel a little weird. I'm like, no, something does not feel right, man. It was my first experience with something that negative, and sure enough, for the next 3 months, this damn thing was with me. So there you go. That's Rutland State Prison. I cannot go back on the grounds. Thing, we almost made a pact that we're going to leave each other alone, and it's sort of an unspoken thing. So anytime I've thought about, well, let me go and put a documentary together on Rutland Prison Camp, I have my own experiences, I know people. Every time I look at that place with my mind's eye, I am literally turned the other direction and pushed away. I said, okay, yeah. I relinquish.
You guys ever wonder that if this world's some of the reason why this world might be so crazy is some of the portals people opened up and never closed?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think
absolutely
that could absolutely be true. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things they don't have a clue about.
It's crazy, I mean, just wide open door of negativity coming through. When you brought up the cults, all that satanic worship and stuff. I mean, there's no more negative energy than that stuff. And you see, you got teenagers just doing it, thinking because Ozzy Osbourne did it on his album cover or whatever. So they're just blindly playing the game. We talk a lot about Ouija boards, which we think are really kind of crazy because you can just go get one at the toy store, toy section of Walmart. But like, if you're a kid, and you're trying, you heard word you could talk to your grandfather who passed through the Ouija board, and you go open up a portal. It might not be the grandfather coming through, but something's coming through. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I said, I find it crazy that you can find these in the toy section of Walmart. You can't find tarot cards there,
Right.
or dowsing rods, But I think you're right. I think, a lot of this can be attributed to teenagers actually just dabbling in this stuff. And what they do is very easy to open a portal but it's not so easy to close it. And I don't think that a lot of these people who are dabbling with Ouija boards even understand how to close it, even if they,
Right.
I don't think they're necessarily neglecting it. They just don't realize.
Well, it's not like instructions come with it.
Yeah, aside
Nope.
from how to do it.
Right.
Jeff.
Yeah,
But sometimes they get so deep.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Kim.
I said nobody's protecting themselves either.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
God, no.
Exactly.
And they wonder why things happen to them.
Well, things sometimes get so intense that they literally will abandon mid-ritual. I mean, if you pull something like what's in Rutland State Prison Camp into your life at any point, I mean, you're going to, number one, feel the impact of this thing coming in. And then, who knows what happened? Maybe they all scattered at that point and saying, oh shit, what did we just do? And there's nobody left to put this thing back where it came from,
To go with what Damien was just saying about the youth, it's I was just telling a story recently. I grew up in the church, so like the Satan stuff always bothered me and creeped me out. I remember going to a sleepover, maybe like 6th or 7th grade, and like some of the kids there put pentagrams on them because they thought it was just like a fun thing to do. And I remember being like horrified, like get out of here with that. And but it's so accepted, you know what I mean? Like through movies and rock and roll and stuff, which we got to have our movies and rock and roll. I'm not saying shut that stuff down, but like, yeah, it's definitely misleading. And like, you'll hear an interview with like Ozzy they'll back in the day they'd take a picture holding the Jack Daniels bottle, but they don't drink the whole bottle, but the kids will see it and think that they can drink a whole bottle of Jack Daniels, and they turn into full blown alcoholics by like 16 years old. And it's a big dark thing,
But you also have to keep in mind that any sort of communication, whether it's mediumship, whether it's Ouija boards, a seance, even an investigation where you're reaching out, you're opening up access to yourself and possibly opening a portal. And people don't do protection. And when I would teach, there was protection. You allowed only certain people in to be able to communicate with, and then you would close the communication afterwards to make sure nothing was left open. And whether it's watching TV shows or whether it's videos, people see it, they think that'd be cool, they go in, they don't know what they're doing, and boom, those portals are open, that energy is coming through.
The youth
and it may not
never thinking.
Sorry, say again, Matt.
The youth is never thinking of protection. I figured I'd throw a condom joke in there for everybody.
It's not very far from the truth, though.
Well, some of these entities, including the one that's at Rutland, are pretty immune to white light in certain respects. And this is something I had found out, and then I was told afterwards about this particular entity that kind of confirmed what I had discovered. So, I mean, the only way I think I got away, with what you might call unscathed in a sense, is that because it was always there, because it was always saying in some way, shape, or form, you called me, what do you want? I'm here. Number one, I realized it won't necessarily come to you when you call it at the location. It might come on their time when you're in bed, in the tub, and at work, whatever the case may be. And two, I realized the most horrifying aspect about what I was going through, and that was that I was going to have to turn around and face this being and communicate with it directly to mitigate what was going on. And that is exactly what I did. In my mind's eye, I turned around, because again, it was always there, turned around, looked at this thing, and in so many words, more feeling than words, honestly, I said, look, I was looking to speak with you, and obviously I've stepped over a line here, so in one way, shape, or form, I did try to extend some sort of amends without completely apologizing, but apologizing enough that I had pulled something out of its element that now was following me around. Now, it wasn't immediate. They said, oh, okay, thanks, I appreciate that, have a nice day. It kind of just sat there, and it just stayed there. It was motionless, very statuesque, And at one point, I noticed maybe a day or two later, it was still sitting there, but it was a little bit further back in my mind. And then the next day, a little further back, a week later, it's all the way back here until it finally sort of just, I don't see it anymore. So, yeah, what you get yourself into, I mean, you have to be able to get yourself out. Otherwise, it can be a very disastrous consequence that you face.
I think that sometimes it happens by accident. You guys and we've talked about the shadow person that used to be at our house. And I don't know what brought this on because it just suddenly started happening. I'm of the opinion that shadow people are not ghosts. I'm also the opinion that are any kind of spiritual entity. I think that they are interdimensional beings and they are attracted to certain things. And if there's, and at the time there was some problems in our household. And I think that that's what brought this whole thing on. And a spiritual medium that I know told me the next time you see it, because it never really did anything. It would just like hang out in the hallway, but it left a very uneasy feeling in the house. And she told me, she said, the next time you see it, if you want to get rid of it, just tell it that I don't know why you're here, but I'm not keeping you. And she said, send some love toward it. And I did. And we haven't seen it since. And that was, a year and a half ago, I guess. But not to breach the entire subject of shadow people, because we could do another hour on that. But we had that happen, and we also have a spirit of a cat that hangs out with us. And so we had Rob Goutreau on, who is considered the pet medium, and he communicates specifically with pets that have passed on. And I told him about this cat, and he seemed to think that the cat was somehow attached to Ralph, like it belonged to one of his past family members. And for the life of him, he can't think of anybody that would have had a cat in his family. But yeah, so yeah, interesting. I just bring that up because I think I wanted to point out that I truly believe that there's a huge difference between spirits and these shadow beings.
You think they all feed off your energy?
Yeah, most definitely.
Even the good ones, I think, do too. Even the good ones, just not as much, but they still a little bit.
Well, it's interesting because I think they feed off your energy, but here's what I think. I think they want you to produce this energy. So the easiest way for them to produce energy is to scare you because they're so weird. But I think if you're really happy and laughing or you're having ecstasy, I think they could eat that energy too. Yeah. But the problem is it's really hard for them to make you laugh. How is it going to make you laugh? But it's really easy. It's really easy to scare the shit out of you, so that they just do that instead.
Depends on the vibration.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, let's do that. Let's get out of here for the night. Ray and Matt, thank you so much for being on here. I love it when we have people who are well-versed in the gamut of the paranormal, because that's the way we are, we can touch on any subject in the paranormal and know something about it. I know that Kimberly and Ralph and myself and Michael and Wild have done a lot of research into the paranormal, and we've gone down a lot of rabbit holes. And so it's nice to speak to other people that are like that can talk about anything in the paranormal. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting
that we met you all.
Yeah, you too. Viewers, thanks a lot for watching. And again, you can find the links to our Patreon page and Buy Me a Coffee. I've also dropped a link for Ray and Matt's Mostly Ghostly podcast on Apple. And I'm looking forward to your YouTube channel that you're going to do.
Yeah, we're on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get podcasts. Boombastic Media, two O's in Boombastic on YouTube. We actually have a short film up there right now, which we did about interdimensional demons. It's narrative story about a gentleman with that insomnia. It's called Insomniac. and
Oh, God.
because he doesn't sleep, his third eye opens up and he's allowed to see like into a different dimension. But the problem is when he can see it, the thing in the different dimension can now see him because the barrier is being torn down. And
Right.
Okay.
yeah, he goes to get help from some people that don't really quite help him that make things worse. But if anybody wants to see it, Insomniac on Boombastic Media's YouTube page.
Is that fictional,
Great.
or is that a more serious account?
It's fictional.
Okay.
I've had insomnia for a long time in my days off and on, and
I've had it for the last 2 weeks.
it's weird when you get into a couple of days. Like there's a fuzz that comes over you that makes everything dreamlike almost. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Weird.
heavy into the dimensional demon aspect of the paranormal around the time of that. It was just like it linked up because like it's kind of a crazy thought that if through sleep you break down the barriers enough for you to kind of reach out and touch something in a different dimension. It's weird, but it feels so real. You know what I mean?
It's a cool concept, man. That's a cool
Right.
concept.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. Viewers, thanks a lot for watching. And as always, keep thinking and question everything.